Hello everybody, it's time to talk about the WoW Classic Demo. Vanilla WoW is a game that had a significant impact on who I am as a person today. There's a lot of nostalgia there for me, and I got a chance to play the demo, thankfully, because I was gone for 2 weeks for BlizzCon, and I wasn't about to play the demo there at BlizzCon because the line was literally like 2 hours long, and there was no way I was going to do that just to play Vanilla WoW. And it was available to anybody who had a BlizzCon ticket or the virtual ticket, so you could play at home. So essentially, I thought, well, if they extend the demo, which they said they might, then I would have a small chance of being able to play it when I got home. So they did extend it, went until Monday the 12th, and I got a chance to play it. And now I have a ton of freaking thoughts on it. So what were you able to do in the demo? Let's kind of break this down first, and then I'll give you my thoughts and opinions on this entire thing. So first off, you didn't start at level 1, you started at level 15. For the Horde, they started you in the Barrens, and for the Alliance, they started you in Westfall, which is totally fine. Those are two extremely iconic zones for Vanilla WoW. And within those zones, you could level up to level 19. The dungeons weren't available. You couldn't do the Dead Mines or Wailing Caverns. And as far as the other stuff is concerned, it just wasn't available. So you were basically limited to these two very iconic zones, which again is totally okay. Outside of that, you didn't really have much other content you could do aside from leveling up. You got to see the classes, you got to remember the talents and how the combat worked and how the quests worked, and remembering small little things like, oh right, there was no like quest tracker as far as being able to show you where the quests were. You could track like what you were needing to do for your quests, like, you know, collect how many zebra hooves that you needed to get, but it wouldn't tell you where to go to get those. And I found that rather curious because it was one of those things that you jump into the classic demo and you're like, oh yeah, that's how things were. I forgot about that. So let me take you back for a second to tell you how I got into WoW, because I think with WoW Classic, the most important thing is the nostalgia. And how do you get to that nostalgia? Well, you tell your story, because everybody's story is unique. For me, Vanilla WoW launched when I was in high school, and I jumped in on launch day. But my story goes back a little further before that. You see, my dad had bought the Warcraft 3 Collector's Edition. We had gone over to my buddy's house, and he was playing Warcraft 3, and we're like, oh, this game is awesome. We need to pick this up. I had previously touched Warcraft 1 and 2 briefly, but I didn't end up playing those until, like, fully all the way through until later. And when we saw Warcraft 3, we were like, we got to get this. This is awesome. This is like StarCraft, which I played a ton of, but cooler because it had the RPG mechanics, you know, like leveling up your characters as you went through the campaign, or in multiplayer, you know, being able to make those characters and whatnot. So he bought the collector's edition because it was a treat to himself. And like any enterprising son at the time, I kind of took it over. I was like, hey, this is cool. I'm glad you got this. I'm going to look through it. So I went through all of this stuff. I remember putting the Warcraft 3 soundtrack on my computer at the time and having all the music. And then I also went through and watched all of the DVDs. So it came with a DVD that was like behind the scenes, the making of Warcraft 3. And in that DVD, they had a trailer for World of Warcraft. That was when I first heard about this MMO that was about to come out. And on top of that, the interesting thing is they had kind of a sneak peek about it where the developers talked about what the game was. And I'll tell you what, that absolutely hooked me. I immediately went to the website. I started looking up information. I signed up for the alpha at the time, and you know, to my surprise, I don't remember how long after, but it was, you know, not too long after, once they actually opened up the alpha, I had gotten in and I got to play the game in a really, it was bad. It was really bad. You know, the humans looked awful, and all of the stuff was way different than it was at the actual launch of the game. But I did play the alpha a little bit when beta came out. I played it quite a bit. I think the highest I ever wanted to get to was level 20 at those times, and I believe you could only get to level 20 at one point. I don't remember if they had changed that cap or not, but I do remember only getting to 20. and not wanting to play anymore because I was like, when this game comes out, that's when I want to play it, because we knew everything was going to be wiped and that when the game actually launched, it wouldn't be there. But by the time launch did come around, I'll tell you, I remember very vividly, nobody knew how successful this game was going to be. I had a couple friends who were interested in it. They wanted to come play with me, but the $15 a month was going to be a bit pricey for them, even though at the time subscription MMOs were a thing. You know, I had a friend playing EverQuest and he didn't want to come play WoW because he was already playing EverQuest and he saw WoW as a dumbed down version of EverQuest. He played the beta and he was like, no, it's not for me. I had other friends that were super interested because they never played an MMO before, and they're like, wait, we can only play online with each other? That's awesome. And they ended up doing that. I had another friend who played Earth and Beyond with me, which is my favorite MMO of all time, and I hate EA for shutting that thing down because it was fantastic. Imagine Eve, except a lot more accessible. The WoW version of Eve, mind you. It was really good. And I had him coming over to play WoW with me as well. So I had like all these people. I had my dad who was going to be playing and one of my friends, or one of my dad's friends as well, coming in. So we had quite a large group at launch that would be playing with us. I was going to make the guild and I was going to be the leader of the guild and everything. So it was an exciting time. And I remember very specifically, because of that Warcraft 3 Collector's Edition, wanted the Collector's Edition for vanilla. And my dad drove like 6 hours to go get this thing from a Best Buy that happened to have it for launch day. And he got his own version of the game and a version of the game for, his buddy. And that was really difficult because I didn't get the game until a few days after launch. But thankfully, it didn't matter because damn were those servers dead. There was no way to jump on and play the first couple weeks. I remember once I did get my game and I was able to get online for a bit and play a little bit and start making my characters and all that, I remember very specifically and vividly that we got credited like 2 weeks worth of game time because of the server issues at launch. And it was way more than Blizzard was expecting. It was way more than we were expecting. And it was super exciting. That's the thing that sticks with me. I remember how exciting that time was, that the game was successful and that there were all these people playing. And I remember logging in and seeing just tons of people running around in these starter areas, trying to level, trying to vie for all of these mobs to kill. And it was actually really difficult to level up because, back in vanilla, when you tagged a mob, it was then your group's mob. When you killed it, and if another person from the same faction tried to hit it, if they wouldn't get credit for killing that thing, and they wouldn't get loot for killing that thing, as in, normal WoW today. So it was really difficult to level up with all those people, and it took quite a bit of time, but it was something that I was definitely invested in. I would come home from school every single day, jump into WoW, and play all night. I was really good with school. I typically didn't feel ever challenged by high school. I was usually at the top of my class on a lot of stuff, and I got really bored with high school very quickly. So I wouldn't suggest doing this for the young people out there, but I totally ignored most of my homework. I got in what I needed to get in. We had like a super hardcore English teacher that if you were missing any assignments, you had an F in the class. So you had to turn in everything. So I had to make sure I got her stuff done, but everybody else's stuff I kind of was a little easy on. I just made sure I didn't really do a whole heck of a lot because I wanted time to play WoW, and that is what I did. That is what I invested my time into. By the time I hit 60, which was later than a lot of people in the guild, because a lot of the people in the guild that we had were much older. They had a lot more time invested into the game than I could because, I was gone at school for most of the day. By the time I hit level 60, I was playing my Resto Druid, and literally the night that I hit 60, this group ran me through Blackrock Depths. I got my Molten Core attunement, and I jumped in and I did Lucifron. We didn't kill Lucifron because people were freshly level 60. There were not a whole lot of gear going around, but you know what? It was awesome to jump in and do my first raid for my very first time, and I was hooked. 40 people actually, I believe it was like 30 people because we couldn't find 40 people to do it. But having all of those people in one area working together, talking on I don't even remember what it was. It wasn't Mumble. I believe it was TeamSpeak at the time before we ever went over and did Ventrilo. But we were talking on that with each other communicating, trying to get this boss dead, and that memory has been sunk into my head so much that from then on I was hooked to raiding. I made sure that I did every raid when it came out. You know, I did Molten Core. I remember killing Ragnaros for the first time on our server. That was an amazing amount of fun. We went and did Onyxia. When Blackwing Lair came out, we went and did Blackwing Lair. We did AQ 20 and AQ 40 when that released. And at the time of AQ, I had moved to Florida to go to Full Sail, which is a trade college for game design and stuff. And I remember doing AQ, and then when Nax came out, I remember working on Nax with my guild, and we killed Instructor Vesuvius with 20 of us because we were working at AQ at the time, trying to get a little further in there. But the rest of the team didn't want to go work on Nax. They wanted to finish AQ. So after raid, 20 of us would go over and work in Nax. So we, killed Instructor Vesuvius with 20 of us. And it was one of the most exciting raid memories that I have in my time. And I was just like a simple restorator. I was just healing. And it was one of the most fun things that I can remember. So all of that said, WoW holds a very special place in my heart. It is a core point of gaming for me. All of high school and then quite a bit afterwards, I was playing vanilla WoW. I was very invested in it. I was a part of guilds that were doing awesome things in the game. And on top of that, you look years later till now when Battle for Azeroth is out, and I took a time off for Mists of Pandaria and for Warlords of Draenor. I went and played some other MMOs, but I eventually did come back to it, and I am enjoying the game as it is now. It is a game that holds a special place in my heart. I found the love of my life through this stupid game, and it is something that changed the way that I look at games and got me playing games that I probably wouldn't otherwise. So I'm very thankful for vanilla WoW. So with all of that said, does the nostalgia hold up? Is the WoW Classic demo good? Well, it's certainly as I remember it in a lot of regards. Combat is so slow compared to what it is now, which isn't necessarily a good thing. It is fun. I do enjoy it. I like the challenge, and I'm going to have fun playing in Classic WoW when it launches. But I prefer current combat in WoW. Why is that? Well, the Demon Hunter, for instance, is what I play right now. It is the class that I've really always wanted since vanilla WoW, since playing Warcraft 3, because I was like, Illidan is awesome. And I've always wanted that class fantasy, and now that I have it, I don't ever want to be without it because it is what I want to play. It is really fun for me. I like how the Demon Hunter plays. I like how fast it is. And this is something that my opinion changed on over time. I think if you had looked, back before Cataclysm, I would say no, vanilla WoW combat was the best combat. But after Cataclysm, after I took a break and I went and played games like SWTOR and WildStar especially, and I realized that combat can be interesting and fun and complex and fast and not really have to feel very slow like it does in vanilla WoW and still be good. So for me, I prefer how the game currently plays in Battle for Azeroth. I don't really like, things like the Heart of Azeroth, the Azeroth pieces, but you look back to Legion, I loved the artifact weapons. I thought those were a really cool addition. So in my opinion, there are a lot of things that are better with WoW currently than there were back in vanilla, but it is really cool to go back and be like, oh yeah, this is how it was, playing a mage or something and having to drink and eat after every couple pulls, and you can't really pull more than one or two things because you're probably gonna die, and CC really mattered back then. There's all these little things, you have all of these spells that you have access to, and you have the ranks to the spells, and all of this stuff is really cool and nostalgic. Would it hold up to somebody who hadn't ever played vanilla WoW or, I guess earlier versions of WoW? Probably not. It would feel very dense and very slow. I think the current version of WoW does appeal to a broader amount of players, a more modern amount of players, but when it comes to that specific feel that vanilla WoW has, there's no beating it. So I think there is a very good place for this game. I think this game is going to get its own audience that is going to be very devoted to it. And these are probably the people that you see talking about, the good old days and back in my day and all of that, and how they believe that vanilla WoW was the best version of WoW and the game's gone downhill since then. I think those people, are obviously entitled to their own opinions, but they're very short-sighted in what they see for the game. So vanilla WoW to them is the best version of WoW, and they should by all means go and play it, especially because having just a WoW subscription for $15 a month is going to get you both the normal game, you're going to get the live version, and then you're going to get WoW Classic as well, just thrown in there. So yeah, they will definitely go back and play it and do all the content as they remember doing it. Heck, I'm going to go back and play it, and I want to go do Molten Core and Onyxia and Blackwing Lair and Nax and AQ and all that stuff when it does eventually release, which they did say will happen. They have a release schedule that they're going to stick to for the game that is indicative of the original release schedule, and I'm excited for that. I'm excited to see that content in there. But there's a part of me that goes, but what if they want to change some things? Would I be okay with that? Because vanilla WoW is a very specific experience, an experience where a lot of classes, or rather a lot of specs, were not necessarily viable at all. You never really saw a pally tanking any kind of raid content at that time. You saw two warriors. Warriors were the go-to for tanks. That didn't mean that paladins were bad. The problem with paladins is they didn't have a taunt. So a lot of the boss fights that required tank swapping, you just couldn't really do, or rather, you had a hard time even with normal bosses if your DPS were, not waiting for you to get aggro. But at the same time, not having a taunt is a pretty big blow. So, pally tanks weren't really a thing. You had a taunt as a druid, as a feral druid, but your defensive skills weren't quite as good as the other classes. You were going to be taking a lot more damage. And sure, there were bear tanks back then, but were they ever in top guilds? No, they just weren't that viable. They weren't good enough. So what did you typically see from druids? Well, you saw resto druids. Sometimes you saw moonkin. People made it work, and that's totally fine. But resto druids were the main thing. For priests, you pretty much saw like a pretty good span of all three of them, depending on the patch at any given time. Shadow priests at one point did really melt face, and they were very, very good. But the other two healing specs were pretty equally represented in raids. So there was a lot of stuff back then that the class balance wasn't that great. And I think that's okay. I think that's okay to have, and I think that's okay to maintain, because that's what vanilla classic WoW is about. But part of me goes, how different would things be if they just changed things slightly? If they gave prop pallies a taunt, or if they changed it so feral druids had a bit more survivability and just like slightly tweaked things to make more things more viable, it would be, on one hand, completely sacrificing the idea of vanilla WoW, because it wouldn't be vanilla WoW anymore. But at the same time, it might make that experience better. So right now, the way the game is it sits in an interesting state of what do they change, what do they add, and what do they not. Because you have, graphic sliders. You can set it to whatever the high or the highest was at the time for vanilla WoW, and I'll tell you what, the game looks like vanilla WoW. It looks bad. But they also have the option to turn the graphics all the way up, which, you see on my screen. I have everything running at max, which I wasn't able to do back then because I didn't have a fantastic, actually, I did have a really good computer, but I didn't have, top of the line. So at what point do you give and take? What kind of quality of life changes do you add to vanilla WoW, and what do you keep back because it's vanilla and you want to keep that experience? It's an interesting dilemma that the developers have, and it's one that I'm curious to see how they end up working out, because if you change too much, it's going to mess with people's nostalgia, which is the most important part of vanilla WoW. All in all, though, I think the demo is a really good indication that they're going in the right direction with rebuilding the game. I am really excited for it. I am looking forward to playing it. I am going to play it when it comes out. I am going to hit level 60 on a character. Do I know what I'll play yet? No. I mean, the dilemma I have is that back in vanilla, I played a Night Elf Druid, and I don't really play Alliance anymore. But there's that thing that you have to consider, which is that Paladins were only available to Alliance, Shaman were only available to Horde, and I do like playing the Shaman. I don't know if I want to play the Druid anymore. I think I like that experience. I will level up a Druid, but I don't think I will primarily play a Druid. I'm torn between, do I play optimally or do I play suboptimally? The Horde had a pretty big advantage having Bloodlust, but the Alliance had a pretty big advantage in the fact that they had, some of the Paladin stuff going on. Like Devotion Aura is just really good for a 40-man raid because of the amount of armor you're giving everybody, the damage reduction you're giving everybody. But at the same time, they had Dwarf Priests, which had Fear Ward, which was really good because, of course, all the different priests races had different abilities. So it's like, which balance do I strike? Do I go back to playing Alliance or do I play Horde? Because that would give me a new experience of vanilla that I didn't get to experience. And that is the beauty of it. That is the gem that is the classic WoW when it does release, is do you go back and you continue that experience that you had way back when, or do you try something new and experience it from a different angle? And that is what I'm most excited for. I love this. I know a lot of people who are like, no, it's not for me. And I think that's totally fine. I think WoW Classic has an audience. I am definitely a part of that audience, but I'm also a person who actually prefers playing live more than Classic. So where do I strike that balance? I'm not sure yet. I guess I'll see when I get to that point. But this is a game that I love. This is a game that has a lot of nostalgia for me and a lot of significance for me, and I plan on going back and playing that experience again. Whatever I end up doing in that experience is going to be different by the time I get there, whether I play Horde or Alliance. But I'm really curious what you guys think. What are your opinions on Classic WoW? Definitely let me know in the comments, because I think this is a very interesting discussion. What is your story of how you got playing WoW? Or have you never played it at all and you kind of missed that bandwagon? And do you feel like bad for that? Do you feel regretful that you were never there at launch and got to have a part of that conversation that everybody else does? Let me know this stuff, because I think this is all very important for the grand picture of Classic WoW, because everybody has their own story, whether you played it or not. And I think that's the important thing here. And I'm really curious about what your guys' stories are. But with that being said, I can't wait for this to come out. I'm really excited for it, and I will go and play it when it does come out. So if any of you guys are interested, definitely hit me up on launch, and we will make sure that we kind of create an OSW guild inside Classic WoW for the people who want to play that. And obviously, if you want to come play with us in normal WoW, we have plenty of spots for you to come and join in. With that being said, though, we shall see you guys next time.